let's talk about books. These are the books I read in January, and overall, really, really strong month, which is so fun when that happens. Sometimes people ask me, like, if you are so if you notice like so many specific things about books that are so bad, is it a bummer? Because then do you you enjoy books less? Which I do enjoy books I think are terrible less, but I also enjoy incredible books more, I think. And so it's completely worth it to me. And also, you can't be any other way than however you are. So that sounds like an indictment against personal growth. You know what I mean. Okay, the first book I finished in 2026 is The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater, and it was so good. I wasn't even trying to read it. I got it for my mom and I. So I started doing this thing for Christmas last year where I buy 2 of each book. How do you say this? So I bought 2 of this book and I wrapped both of them and I tied them up and I put them under the tree. And I do that with 3 other sets of books. And then I give it to my family and it's a book club. And so I walk around, they all open it at the same time, and then I walk around and I take back 1 of each. And then we read the books together if they want to. And I always pick a book that I haven't read, which is super both iffy and free. Yeah, because it's I don't know if we're gonna like this. So anyway, this one I had heard it was a little bit Downton Abbey and a little bit of historical fiction, but World War II. So just Downton Abbey in terms of upstairs, downstairs, people who make a household work, if you're not familiar with Downton Abbey, and the wealthy people who frequent it or live there, and something else. So Olivia loves the Raven Boys, and now I want to read it because I love a good middle grade series, YA series, which is Maggie's other thing, her thing she's more well known for, and then this book came out last year. So I picked it out for me and my mom. The thing with my book club Christmas present is, as Teddy's book sitting in my TBR attests, I don't start the book until my family member tells me that they're starting the book. And then I was sitting at the kitchen counter one day writing in the front page to Mama Love Mad. So I think, sorry, that was really loud. That's one thing that whenever I finish a book, I write my name and the date that I finished it. I've started tracking better the date I started as well. And then I put who told me about it and where I got it. And my mom has done that forever. So she was having me write, I got you this for Christmas, love you. And I just started doing this. I was just reading, and then I was like, Mama, I'm so sorry. I started it already. And told her that she did not have to read it anytime soon. But I'm so pleased. And last year I did historical fiction for her too. It's not up here because I didn't like it. Frozen River by Ariel Lawson. You can go watch the whatever January, February video from last year. Because but we're gonna talk about The Listeners. So, guys, okay, there's a book that was so, I think I have this one on here, popular, maybe 7 years ago, called, yes, oh, I'm sinking, Gentleman in Moscow by Amber Towles. And people loved this book, and I gave it 4 stars. It felt a little bit, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. There were moments that were precious. It was well written, but this is what. If you like Gentleman in Moscow, I think you will like this. It is different, and I love this book so much. So the conceit is based on a true thing, which is that in World War II, all of the American diplomats who were abroad got imprisoned by the Axis countries. So America imprisoned or interred the Axis diplomats and celebrities who were in the United States. And they did this in luxury hotels, and they lived there until they could make the POW exchange on the boats and the Portugal and the shipping everybody back and forth. So this novel is set at one of those luxury hotels and follows the general manager, whose name is June, who is such a good character. And she started at the very bottom of the ranks at the hotel, and now she runs it. It's owned by this incredibly wealthy family, and she was trained by kind of the head. He's dead now, but he was like the grandfather, I guess, age-wise, of that family. And she steered the hotel through all these really difficult times. And it was so well written. It was so interesting. The plot just moved along at such a good pace. The FBI shows up like pretty early in to be like, I don't know if you didn't hear from us, but you have to move all of these guests out. And so it's like JP Morgan and his wife pack their bags and go kind of thing. But it doesn't do the thing where she tries to name drop too much. I don't really like when fiction pulls in too many real people and you feel like you like notice it, because it's like, oh, you're writing fiction, here's this famous person coming in. It was not that at all, because the rich people have to leave right at the beginning and June has to handle it. Guys, I don't think I'm like saying well how good it was. Hopefully my tone is covering for me. This was so special and so fun. This is what, okay, remember that this is true, and it's not reflected in the one book from this month that was not a good experience of reading, my bad book from this month. So remember this time too. This is what a talented writer can do. Lovable, unique characters and a plot with so much going on that I was kept on my toes, and never so much happening that I got lost. Enough foreshadowing that every development was earned, but not so much that I figured out what would happen. That is such a joy, to get to experience a book where an author just delivers. So many details in this were so fun. It's also one of, those fiction books where the sidebar comments, like commentary, are fantastic. Lots of great ones about listening well, social interactions, luxury, and wealth. So your main character is the general manager, so she has really interesting ideas about listening, because you have to anticipate the needs of people who are coming here and spending all this money staying here. You have to memorize all of your guests. They have all these books with all these notes about people. And because you're following her for a lot of the book, you get to hear so many of her reflections on all of those topics. It was so good. And there's a little bit of magical realism, but you could almost just like not even notice it. Or it's minor enough that if you don't usually go for a little bit of magic in your real world books, I would put this more squarely in historical fiction. And I want everyone to read it, and I want you to tell me you read it, and then we can talk about it, because I really, really liked it. So, started off with a great one, and then we read another great one. I'm having so much fun. This is Eligible by Curtis Sittenfeld. I have not read any Curtis Sittenfeld, and she's just one of those writers whose book comes out every year or two. And I gave Teddy one of her books prep for Christmas, and Teddy was like, yeah, you can kind of tell, it's set at a prep school, that it was like kind of one of the first ones of those sort of preppy academic drama plotline books. But she said I didn't need to read it. Alexis had told me to read this one / The Whole World, because she wrote a rec for it when we had our regulars and customers write rec cards. Then we put them up. That was the first time we got this book in the bookstore, I'm pretty sure. And I think I just needed more fiction and saw it on the shelf one day and got it before I left. Okay, I loved it. I thought it was so delightful the whole time. It's pretty long, but the chapters are pretty short. It is a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice, which I have read, but not recently. But it was pretty fun to track the story development along the way. And Pride and Prejudice, you may or may not remember, is 5 sisters and then the parents. And you follow the second oldest sister, by Keira Knightley, if you've watched the movie. And this was so fun. It's set in Cincinnati, and Liz Bennett, who's the one who falls in love over the course of the book, is 38, which is super unusual to have a late 30s main character who gets a full romantic plotline. So I loved that. And she's been living her adulthood with her older sister in New York City, and they come home because their dad has had some like heart attack. I don't know. This is not a medical channel. He's had some issues with his heart, so he had to have surgery. So they had to fly from New York City into Cincinnati, and it's the kind of thing where it's like they didn't know that he was having poor health. And then Liz finds out that he didn't have health insurance, and she finds out that their family is pretty precarious financially. Her 3 younger sisters are still living with their parents. They don't really have jobs. So she goes from being a writer and living independently and supporting herself in New York with this kind of crummy non-boyfriend to being in her childhood bedroom again, living with her family of 4 sisters and her parents, both of whom have their own weird inabilities to communicate, and just every character in this is so unique and also so similar to the original. I thought it was just a really delightful read. Darcy was great. All of the ways the plot kind of follows the original are great. I had so much fun. I think if you don't like Pride and Prejudice, you might still like it. The trope it turns on with the older sister is the Bingley character. Now I'm like, if you don't like Pride and Prejudice, listen to all these details about it. Eligible is the name of the Bachelor TV show in this world. And Chip Bingley, who is the one you know ends up with the older sister, or will they, won't they, was on Eligible as a single guy, or yeah, The Bachelor with all of the women, the dating show. And he's also a doctor, which is how he knows Darcy. And it was just a great time. Then I read In W by Zadie Smith. Let me grab my other Zadie. It kind of breaks my heart that you guys can't see fiction every single week. And I've thought about how to include, oh, I do have that one. I was thinking about that book a second ago. How to include fiction in the shot. And really I would have to just stand or build an adult high chair. I don't know. So these are my other books I've read by Zadie Smith. This one is Swing Time. It's a gorgeous book. I got it shortly after it came out. Dr. Johnson had told Bailey to read it, maybe. I don't think he even recommended it to me, and I don't remember how. I don't remember where I got it. I think this is before I would write where I got it. And I read this my junior year of college and thought it was amazing. Like, smart. It took me a long time to read, and also it was amazing. And this is before I wrote reviews in books, so I actually wrote this like this note to Zadie Smith basically about how amazing the book was, which is essentially what I do now, writing a review almost. I am keeping it because she doesn't need that, and I do want to know what I thought of the book. But I had read Swing Time 2017, and then I read On Beauty. I was texting Viv maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. I was like, I need some good fiction. She said On Beauty was a good one, and I hadn't read it. It's roughly based on a old classic whose name I can never remember. I think it's H.M. Forrester's book, and the name has, anyway. And it was a wild ride. A really readable book, except that my copy was printed incorrectly, so I had to flip the pages back and forth. So it would go like page 48 and then page 52, and then I would have to go here to get to 49, 50, and then go back here. This is all stuff you don't need to know. But what you do need to know is I had enjoyed the first 2 Zadie Smith books I read. And I'm reading through, as you probably know, Roxane Gay's top 10 books of the century list that she made. And this was the next one. on that list that I decided to read. It came out in 2012, and it was a little bit more inscrutable to me. It's set in London, which is where most, or a decent amount of screen time is set in a part of On Beauty in northwest London, which is, if you just type NW and then London, it's like NW7, NW9 into Google Maps. It'll show you like the exact list of neighborhood names from my Google Maps research, what I could gather. And this is a book about two childhood friends, and it bounces around in time. So you start with Leah, and she's married and she's a little bit disconsolate. She's not really feeling much purpose. She's thinking a lot. And then you get, hang on, I had to outline it in the back, which I don't usually do summaries or outlines or anything, but if I think I need to figure out a book, I sometimes will. Then you go to this random guy named Felix, and you follow him as he runs a couple errands. You've never seen him before. Then his section is over, and you go to Natalie, which is Leah's best friend. Leah's the one who's married and kind of meh, ginger. I think there's another fact about her I'm supposed to tell you, but I don't remember. And then Natalie is her childhood friend, and they grew up in the projects together, and the Natalie chunk is the biggest one, and it follows her from her childhood all the way through where the book picks up. And basically, the book was a little bit experimental. It played with structure, as you can tell, with, you know, the Felix chapter in the middle between those two. And I had one of those reading experiences where I just miss being in my English and fellows classes with my friends and learning about a book by conversing about it. I kind of felt like this is a book that I needed someone to talk about to help me figure out. And I think that it was well written. And also, I didn't get it. And I don't feel like, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it, because I really just did my best to track it, but so I gave it 4 stars, and I kind of I gave it like a Zadie Smith round up, a Roxane Gay round up. Like, I've liked Zadie Smith's other stuff. I trust that I would like this book more, or think it worked more, if I could talk to Roxane Gay or talk to someone else who'd read it about it. So that being said, if you read a lot of literary fiction, maybe if you have some sort of connection to London, it might be more enjoyable. I also think it's not the Zadie Smith to start with necessarily if you're going for approachability. I was reading some Goodreads reviews after, and the unapproachability is part of the point, especially linguistically, with how she refuses to change the dialect and the way different people from Northwest London speak. If you didn't grow up with that, you are on the outside linguistically by design. And so that can be really cool to read, and also can have like left me more confused than I would be reading a book set in a place where I have lived. So I didn't really know what to make of it. And I think that's all I can say. There were also a couple of things like this where the words are kind of running around on the page. That is something I'm not super comfortable with. I don't like look, and then it's like, oh, they're all chunked all together. I don't really know about that. I don't know. So I would like to learn, but I don't have a learning buddy. So if you want to read it, you can. Another book I felt that way about, kind of sadly, is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is like so beloved by so many people I love. And I was like, yeah, that was good when I finished it. And I think it's the kind of book where if you got to write an essay about it, or you got to talk, oh, don't fall, buddies. You got to talk to people about it, it would be so cool. So here's to the humanities majors. May we all be lucky enough to do that, which no one is anymore. And that's too bad. the next book I read is Keeper of Lost Children by Sadiqa Johnson. I have read both of Sadiqa Johnson's other books. I think she's a really fantastic writer of historical fiction. I'm going to grab them for a little field trip. And she is one of the best... Oh, I like to put books by their little friends. We'll grab a cold supply. Okay. One of the best writers at writing approachable, readable historical fiction that is based on something real, that stands on its own as fiction. And this is so important. 2 good books, etc. I don't know why I'm sitting like so sideways in this, but no one cares. These are her first 2 books. Yellow Wife is about a woman who was married to a jailer of a slave jail during the Civil War, and her position in like where that put her in terms of she wasn't getting traded away, but she was still a slave, the difficult position to put her children in, and House of Eve, which is about stuff you can read the back. It's like follows 2 storylines, and they're both great. That's what you're gonna get at this moment. I think she does so well. The historical fiction and learning things. Colson Whitehead, I think, also does a good job of that. He's a little bit more literary. Sadiqa Johnson is a little bit more commercial. And know that when you're going in, depending on what you want to pick out. Keeper of Lost Children is a story about 3 different storylines, which is about the max you can do. You can switch POV if you really commit to 3 people and they all feel different enough. You can pull it off, and she did. Each of them was really different. There was one who's a young girl in Maryland, and she's trying to get a scholarship to a nicer school. How do I not spoil things? Then there's a man who is leaving his home in America to go to Germany as a soldier after World War II. And there is a woman who is married to a soldier who is in Germany, and she can't have children. And the story follows the 3 of them from there. I think it's fair to tell you that it's based on... I'm really trying to figure out how much to spoil or not to spoil. There were American soldiers in Germany after World War II was over, doing maintenance-y, military-y things. And some of those soldiers impregnated German women, and then those babies would be American citizens because one of their parents is American. But sometimes when the soldier was black and then the German woman was white, then he would go home and she would be left with a baby who wasn't white enough for the racist society. And so she would be impoverished, or she would lose her status. She would have to give up the baby. And Sadiqa Johnson, in her research for House of Eve, I think, learned about this situation and fictionalizes one real woman who worked really hard to care for these children and tells 2 other stories, and it went really well. Okay, I think I didn't spoil. If that sounds interesting to you, if you like historical fiction, if you like learning about things you didn't know about, it would be a good fit for you. She also, and she did this in House of Eve too, brings the stories together at the end, but not in a way that was too contrived. And that really matters because it's a pretty long book. I think it could have been a little shorter. If you're spending all of this time with these people, you really want the payoff to be there. And it's hard to have the correctly calibrated payoff in fiction, because you can make up anything. Like, you could make all three of those people be related by blood. You could make all three of them walk into the mall at the same time and trip on each other's shoelaces. Like, you could do anything. You shouldn't, though. You should only do what is most believable and also still not just satisfying to the reader, but meaningful to the narrative and the story you're building. So, good work. Yeah. Don't worry, it's actually recording. Can you see me when I lean over there? Okay. You know, I don't like editing because that's not something I think is fun. Although YouTubers who are good at their skill and like to edit videos, I love that. It's very enjoyable to watch a lovingly edited video. Makara Tours is like the one of that for me. That's not what I'm offering to the people, and that's fine. Okay. Next up, I took a break from romance novels because I read 400 terrible, terrible ones. And then I don't really remember why, but I decided to end the break. But I think I did make it like a whole month. So that was great. And I wanted to read this book called Out on a Limb, where the male main character has a prosthetic leg. And so I was like, well, I should read them in order. So I grabbed Out of the Woods. So this is Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. It's a marriage in catastrophe trope. I don't remember what the trope is called, but basically it's like the characters are already married. They're just not doing well. And then the book brings them back together. I don't think I'd actually heard of the trope until I put my review on Goodreads, but it was pretty good. It was, at the beginning, I was stumbling over a couple turns of phrase and I was getting bothered, and then I was like, you will have fun. Just read it. And so I decided that I was going to read it a little bit lighter, and that paid off. It does counterpoint, so it moves you between the past and the present every other chapter, pretty much. And it mostly worked because they were high school sweethearts, so you kind of get the story of them in high school and then the story of them as adults. They go on a wilderness retreat because their marriage is in trouble. I thought that was done pretty well, so not a ton to say about that, except then I was like, oh, great, now I can read Out on a Limb. And if you don't, so the way romances work is, if it's a series, it's just different characters who are friends or siblings in the plots, then having their own main character moment and story. So with my favorite, or one of my favorite ever, do I want to pull them all down? No. The Evie Dunmore series. I read this one first because it came home in a damaged pile from the store, and I was like, kind of in the mood for something fluffy. Obviously, I would never pick this out. That is so ugly. But I was like, I didn't pick it out. It showed up in my house. And then I read it, and I was like, this is so good. And then I found out it's the fourth. So all you realize from that is that the first three are about her three other best friends. Because of romances, the whole thing is you already know how it ends. It's not really a spoiler to read things in the wrong order necessarily, but it can be a richer experience to get to know them in the order the author did. Interestingly, Gentleman's Gambit is almost the strongest book of the series. So when I recommend it, because I didn't read the first one first, I don't really know if I would like it as much as I do if I had started with book number one. But turns out that was not the only time I was going to make that mistake. This is book number one of the, I don't know what the series is called. So I didn't have to read Out of the Woods. And that's probably the only interesting thing. I felt like this one slowed down a little bit in the final third, but also I was traveling and I don't know if I just wasn't really paying that close of attention. Or, like, I'm not convinced it was the book. That's not a specific criticism based on the text inside the binding. This one is, I liked, yeah, like it's just a pretty straightforward, pretty well told story. The main characters were endearing in basically all of them. Interestingly, the main characters from this one were actually a little bit obnoxious in this one, which is interesting. I'm like, would I have read this? If I read this first, maybe not, but I don't think I have anything else to say about all this. But then I read The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 3, and it was so good. And they're so good, and I love these books so much. They are moving into, like, VIP all-timer space. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. And I decided I have to pull them out of fiction. 1 and 2 are just hanging out there up by family, but they're going to get their own spot. And when you're a series and you're that good, you, like Deadly Education, like Mysterious Benedict Society, you get your own spot. So these there are many. There's already 9. But they're so slim. They're so well written. I am so pleased that these books exist. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't even, now, this is my review in the back. Probably the first one I wrote a good long review. Now it just says, I love these so much. In all caps. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. I just order it now. Just go. Make your day. The next book I read is called Writing Hard Stories, and this one is one that I found at the Strand in New York City, October 2024. Is that relevant? No. But it was on their Staff Recs shelf, and I've probably said this before, but I buy most of my books from our bookstore with my employee discount. I am generally a frugal person, so even though I do love to support independent bookstores, I almost only do it now if I want to support a specific store or celebrate a specific thing with a store, or if I see a staff rec that convinces me to buy the book. So Who Will Run the Frog Hospital was one of those I actually got on that trip at Rizzoli, that New York City trip. And this one was one that a staffer wrote a rec for at the Strand. I had never heard of it. I thought it sounded super interesting. I love to write, so I bought it. And finally got around to reading it. In it, Melanie Brooks, the author, she was trying to write a memoir about her father and his life and death. She was really struggling with the emotional part of writing. And she was also finding that in a lot of writing programs, that part of writing was glossed over. It was sort of like, focus only on craft. We don't need to talk about this effect on you or how it feels to write this stuff or what it looks like to be able to birth something like trauma writing or a memoir or something that is so full of grief and so tied into who you are and what your experiences are. And so she got really curious about it. She was going to try and ask someone about it at a conference or something and got all tongue-tied and ran away, and then realized this is actually a question really worth asking. And she emailed, I think, or she reached out to a bunch of memoirists and said, can I come interview you about the process of writing your memoir? And that's what she did. So the structure is really simple. Chapter on chapter, she goes to different writers, meets them for coffee or at their house or whatever, and talks to them and reports back to you. I said, simple structure, solid execution, great idea. Reading about writing can be iffy, but the special topic was specific enough and interesting. Brooks did a great job, so the author did a great job being present on the page but not self-centered, which would be really hard because you are interviewing these authors, so you're like, we met at this coffee shop in South Boston. I asked this and he said this. I was wondering about this part of this thing because her memoir's about her dad dying and my memoir's gonna be mom dying. But she was never obnoxious or overbearing or annoying, and I think that would probably be a difficult line to walk, so I appreciated that. Really cool book, and cool to hear of memoirs and writers I'd never heard of. So I had read 0 of the memoirs that this was about, I had heard of, I thought, 0 of the writers. I realized who some of them were. There's one who's like a famous person. It might be, I don't know how to say it though. I feel bad. Marianne Leone, 131. Let's see. And then I was flipping through my contemporary anthology. Yeah, she's an actress, I guess. I was flipping through my contemporary nonfiction essay collection from my contemporary nonfiction class in college. And Mark Doty has that essay in here. I can't get it in there. See, whenever I finish, then I have all these books to put away. So that'll be fine though. Yeah. I thought this was cool, and I thought it was really special to hear these people talk about things that were so hard and beautiful. It is something that I'm so interested in, and I really, really love people's... I'm not going to read it aloud to you from this, even though I could. People's really difficult memoirs. I have... a book called Bodywork by Nonfiction Has Grown. It now goes to down here as well, which I'm not used to. This one, she talks about basically like there are as many trauma stories to be told as there are traumas that have happened, in response to this sort of opinion that like there's too many trauma memoirs now, which is simplistic thinking for many reasons, among which is that you don't have to read anything you don't want to read, right? This is an all-timer. Okay, these I am. See, I'm gonna clean up as I go. I think this is one of the best ones ever. You can tell that because of where they are on the shelf. And also, there's like a ton more over here. So, thank you, Melanie, for all of those meetings and stories. And it was I have my writing about writing section up there. You can't see it, but it was a good addition to that. And I love the craft of writing. The next book I read is Nobody's Girl by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. And this is a memoir by one of the most outspoken victims of the Epstein sex trafficking ring. And the book came out last year. I think I'll start with reading my summary. There's also a Tate McRae song that came out called Nobody's Girl that was stuck in my head the entire month that I was reading this book. Just permanently because of this, which it's not similar. But now you know. Okay. A story of abuse and abuse and abuse. In the Home by Teenagers by by Epstein, and not mentioned except in the collaborator's note by Virginia's husband. This book was organized and written so cleanly. It did shed light on abuses of power and the complex dynamics of sex trafficking, the vast difficulties of healing from abuse, the misery of chasing abusers through the court system. And Know My Name, see, now I want to hold it and I already put it away, does court very, very well. Just Mercy is another memoir that does court, talking about the horrors and difficulties of the American court system really well. This was the first sex trafficking book that I had read. But the whole time, the reader knows what the authors don't. Virginia killed herself. I reread Amy Wallace's collaborator's note. So that was the collaborator who wrote the book with Virginia. I reread the note right after reading the final chapter. It's printed at the beginning because you know about her death when you pick up this book. She finished the book first, very much on purpose. And so the collaborator's note is kind of a supplemental piece. I reread it right after finishing. You realize that this could have been a domestic violence book too. So throughout the text, her husband is portrayed pretty solidly as a fully supportive, helpful, present person. And in the collaborator's note, Amy notes that there were a couple of instances that she explains that Virginia wanted to leave out of the book, which is her prerogative. Reading that, you realize that this could have been a domestic violence book too. Of course it could have. But you also feel the cables at full lift already. The book doing its utmost already, and can't help the fear that the book and its author couldn't lift that additional weight. This is so well written. It was really well organized. It carried the voice of its author. I think Amy Wallace, whoever she is a really talented writer and editor. She talks about the last time she saw Virginia, she was in Australia, which is where Virginia lives. And she would read it aloud. They got to the point in the draft, she would read it, and then if something sounded weird or whatever, she would go fix it and bring it back. And Virginia would approve it and they would move on. So it's really special. I mean, I always say it's so special to get to read something really well written. And in this book is that. These are all positive little tabs. I know sometimes they're not. Oh, that was heartbreaking. This was interesting. There were a couple times where she would address the reader directly. So she's talking about really, 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 really hard, terrible, terrible stuff. Section break. I know this is a lot to take in. Blah, 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 blah. Please don't stop reading. I know how to get you through these tough parts just by how I help myself, focusing on the present. And then she talks to you about her kids and her life in Australia. So I think that's a really strong structural decision to anticipate the reader's fatigue and also reflect the reader. Imagine if a trauma reel like this played in your head all the time as it does in mine, and not just on the pages of a book you can put down if you need to. And so she's recognizing your experience as the reader, comparing it to her experience as the person who's living through this, and then also giving you the break. That was really cool. She also, yeah, so really cool decisions, and I think a really, really great. It contrasts interestingly with, I know that when I read Joyride, I talked about how weird it was to read a memoir that was just like super fun. And what I realized later was that I should have compared this to is the Ina Garten memoir. So if you like, maybe aren't into cooking, maybe you're into the New Yorker, like this would be your Ina Garten memoir. And anyway, it's interesting that Joyride is not, I put the books by their friends, by where they want to be on the shelf, and the books are connected to the books next to them by theme and idea, and many of them, it's all nonfiction, but not necessarily genre in order. Many of the memoirs are in that section because they have overlapping themes. And Susan is by Cue the Sun, A History of Reality TV, and The Library Book, which is her book she wrote that is, I mean, this was really well written. This book is fantastic and full of so much research and so narrative and gorgeously written. And then that's by The Bookshop, which is the History of the American Bookstore. So good. Maybe one day we just visit all of them. Okay? The last book that I read in January. This is interesting. It's been I felt like it was a good month of reading. I felt like I liked a lot of the books. Don't know. But I don't feel like I've been talking for that long. True or false? Oh, kind of true. I've realized that most of my videos just are almost an hour. no matter what. And I don't even time them or track that or edit for that. I just talk until I'm done. And then we see where we're at. And it's interesting because the first two I posted were 2 months worth of books. Like, it was January, February, March, April. Those were an hour. Maybe I just max out at an hour. I'm tired of talking. But then all the rest of them have only been 1 month, and they've always been an hour too. So I've thought about splitting the month, like doing 2 shorter videos. But I don't know. It would be nice to have more to post, but then I would also have to do all of the moving around and setting up more times, kind of. Because I could technically then film, like, February's now, even though February's not over because I've done the first half. And we'll think about that, but I didn't do it today. A bit of housekeeping. Earlier, I mentioned doing 2 videos a month. At that point, or, soon after, I had spoken about 9 of these 10 books in 45 minutes. Respectable. Great pace. Then I talked about The Raven Scholar. Then I stopped talking about The Raven Scholar, and I got up, and I stopped the video, and it was, at that point, 1 hour and 49 minutes long. And not full of pauses that I could cut. I hadn't eaten dinner in that time or done anything except scream about The Raven Scholar. So I don't actually know what I'm going to do. I think I'm deciding this moment that this is the end of January video part 1. I have just finished talking about this. I think I did like a little joyride moment. Thank you for watching the January video. Then my January part 2 video is going to be 1 hour and 4 minutes of me roasting The Raven Scholar. Just because anything past like 1 hour 30, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. So next Thursday at 2, it's usually one of his videos, you can look forward to me thoroughly coming for every mistake in this book. I'll show you it. Here it is. You want to know how you know it ain't good? Look at all those tags. Those are bad tags. There's only one that's good. And also, why is it this long? We'll do what I like to do. Wrap it up, Madeline. A whole new. This is what I do with fantasy. If Naomi Novik's trilogy is almost the length of one of your books, because this is going to be a trilogy, so there's going to be 3 of these. No. This is where I want you to camp out and exist. I really like this series. So, thank you for watching January. Please enjoy Raven Scholar next time. I'll say this at the end of when I thought that was just one video, but my favorites were the list. Okay, here we go. I loved The Listeners. I loved Unselected Journals by M.M. Lyon, and I also had a blast reading Eligible, and I think Nobody's Girl and Writing Her Stories were fantastic. That's all. Yeah. Happy 2026.